Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott, and you have wandered onto the Prog Corner, and today, boys and girls, I got a good one for you. I'm doing the 10 bands that woulda, coulda, shoulda. Probably in an alternate universe, these bands were huge. And if you think about the topic here, pretty much every single band is eligible to be on here unless you were one of the super huge bands. I mean, how many bands can you say actually got huge over time? Not that many. So I could do probably 20 of these episodes. This was hard, man. As soon as I came up with the topic, about 100 bands came to mind. Yeah, bands like Adrian Belews band, The Bears. Those guys should have been huge, man. Amazing. Mother Love Bone. You think about all the grunge bands that took over the world and they couldn't even get any table scraps. How about the New York City heavy metal band Riot? Those guys were awesome. They never got any due. April Wine comes to mind also. They had a little bit of success, but they should have been way bigger. How about Dave Grohl's first band, Scream? Those guys were amazing before Dave joined. They were amazing while he was in the band. A couple prog bands that I think probably should have been bigger. Happy the Man should have been huge. And Beggar's Opera should have been just a huge, huge band. But as it turns out, nobody talks about them. Nobody remembers them all. And then we get to the curious case of XTC, right? Yeah, they should have been bigger. They should have been huge, but I kind of understand why they weren't. Their music was, maybe a little too English for, the American audience. Maybe their music was just a little too quirky, too weird, little too progressive. So I kind of get why they didn't break. But here are the 10 bands that I think had all the makings of being super huge. And for whatever reason, never quite happened at number 10. It's Green Slade. Oh, man. What a cool band. You look at the time frame. Their first two albums came out in 1973. Their third album, Spyglass Guest, came out in 74, and then Time and Tide in 75. They put out those 4 great records. The first 2 had Roger Dean album covers, then they looked amazing. Dave Greenslade and Tony Reeves are both from Coliseum. Dave Lawson was in Webb and Samurai. And Andrew McCullough was in Fields and some little band called King Crimson. But for whatever reason, Greenslade never really did a whole lot, never really moved the needle all that much. And I think they're amazing. I love the Dave Greenslade solo albums too. Should have been bigger, way bigger, absolutely. At number 9, here's a band that got big. I mean, they had legitimate hits. And they had hits from other people doing covers of their songs. But for some reason, Badfinger, they never got the credit they were due from, bad, record deals with Apple and then later on with Warner Brothers to, Pete Ham killing himself, joining the 27 Club, and Tom Evans exactly 10 years later doing the same thing. But, man, we remember early Badfinger and those hits, man. Come and Get It, No Matter What, Day After Day, Baby Blue, Without You was a number 1 hit for Harry Nilsson and for Mariah Carey, and yet, Badfinger never made any money at all. I guess part of the reason Peter Ham killed himself was because he got a phone call from the United States and all the money's gone. So the next, that night he kills himself. It's just really sad. Badfinger, number 9. At number 8, for bands that should have been huge, but for whatever reason didn't get there, I'm going with Angel. Oh, yeah, I always thought of them as a New York City band, but they weren't. They're from D.C. originally. Apparently, Gene Simmons discovered them, brought them into the Casablanca fold, and they were going to be like kind of the exact opposite of Kiss. They're wearing the white satin and everything. It's kind of silly, but Frank Domino's voice was outstanding. I love him. Punky Meadows, he's just awesome. Greg Giuffria on keyboards, Mickey Jones and Barry Brandt. That was the lineup for the first 3 albums. The self-titled came out in 75, Hell of a Band in 76, On Earth as It Is in Heaven in 77, and White Hot in 78. Those 4 albums are great, man. They should have been huge, man. They looked cool. They had the right sound. I blame Casablanca because I think Casablanca just got super lucky with Kiss. Kiss broke and it had nothing to do with their shepherding or, stewarding of the band at all. They had no idea what to do with Angel. Maybe they were better suited for Donna Summer. I don't know. But Angel should have been huge. Didn't happen. At number 7, Here's a DC band, another DC band formed in 1986. These guys put a couple records out on the Discord label before getting signed to a major. Atlantic signed them for their fourth album. And I'm talking about the mighty Shudder to Think. Oh, man, yeah, don't let the fact that these guys are on Discord make you think they were some kind of like Fugazi or Rites of Spring or, some kind of punk band or whatever. They had that element to them, man, but they were so much more Craig Weedren's voice, one of the coolest voices I've ever heard in my life. The first three albums, they had a different lineup, but for their fourth album, 1994's Pony Express record, one of the best records I've ever heard in my life. Craig Weedren is joined by Nathan Larson, his first album with the band, the guitar player extraordinaire. He's married to Nina Persson from the Cardigans, which is kind of a cool little trivia. Stuart Hill on bass and Adam Wade on drums. He would later on be replaced by Kevin March, who later on would become part of Guided by Voices for their fifth and final album, 50,000 BC. Very progressive, very dissonant, very weird, very cool. Shudder to Think, Pony Express record, ex-French t-shirt. Check that song out. Absolutely love it. At number 6. Yeah, once upon a time, there was a band called REO Speedwagon, and they were, doing some touring in the Midwest, and they got in a fight with their lead singer. They threw him out of the van in a cornfield in the middle of the night. Our poor boy Terry Luttrell was out of REO Speedwagon. They'd shortly hire Kevin Cronin, and REO would, take off like a rocket ship into the stratosphere, leaving our poor boy Terry Luttrell all alone in a cornfield. So what does he do? He forms Starcastle, man. He gets together with Matt Stewart and Steven Hagler, two great guitar players. Gary Strader, that Rickenbacker bass of Gary, R.I.P., amazing. Herb, I love you. He's a fan of the program. And Steven Tesler on drums. And they put out their debut album in 1976. Fantastic record. And then they get Roy Thomas Baker involved for their second and third albums, both of which came out in 77. You had Fountains of Light and Citadel. And then in 78, they decided to go all like Boston or Foreigner or whatever with an album of AOR tracks called Reel to Reel, which I hated back in the day. Going back and listening to it, it should have made them huge superstars, man. They did AOR the right way. They still had, a little bit of the prog in them, kind of like Boston did, right? But man, oh man, these guys should have been huge. Probably a couple years too late, right? They probably should have, if that first album would have come out in like 72 or 73, they might have been in a better position. And I just don't think Roy Thomas Baker had any clue what to do with these guys, right? I mean, he knew all about how to produce Queen, but clearly he didn't know anything about the prog. At number 5, oh yeah, for bands that should have been huge, I'm going with Spirit. Formed in LA in 1967. These guys are a hard luck group if ever there was one. They had a hit early on, I Got a Line on You, but they're best remembered for their fourth album, The 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus. What a great album. Probably in pop culture, they're remembered for suing Led Zeppelin and losing, saying that Led Zeppelin ripped them off for the opening riff of Stairway to Heaven. And you know what? Those guys were on tour with Led Zeppelin every night. Jimmy Page heard Spirit every single night playing that. And if you listen to it, it does sound a whole bunch like Stairway to Heaven. Jay Ferguson, great guitar player. Sadly, probably best known for being the dude that wrote the theme song to The Office. Randy California. John Locke later on went on to join Nazareth. Mark Andes, after his time with Spirit, joined Canned Heat, and he was a member of Heart for a while. And Ed Cassidy. What a band, man. Oh, they should have been huge and mostly forgotten by time. So sad. Brings a little tear to the eyeball. At number 4, how about Renaissance, man? Renaissance should have been huge in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, they had a top 40 hit in the UK with Northern Lights, but they never had any radio play over here. There were some promoters that really dug them. They did good in the live context. They toured constantly in the U.S., so it's so sad because they put all their energy into the U.S. market, and it never really happened. The early Renaissance days were from, the old Yardbird leftovers, Keith Relf, his sister Jane, and Jim McCarty. But then they kind of went through some changes when Miles Copeland became their manager. And we got the classic lineup, of course, of Annie Haslam. Annie, we love you. What a genius. Michael Dunford, John Tout, John Camp, who just left us, I guess, about a month ago. And Terrence Sullivan and, Annie singing those great Betty Thatcher lyrics. Just pick a Renaissance album with Annie Haslam in that lineup. You're going to be happy. What an amazing band. They should have been huge, right? But I think there was a little bit of a bias against female vocals, right? I think it took a little while for, little kids like me to appreciate that women could sing rock and roll too, because I was probably that guy, man. Heart was like the only band with female singers, that I kind of liked as a kid. So clearly I had that bias. I clearly wasn't alone, because Renaissance should have been at least as big as Yes or Genesis or Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Absolutely, they should have been. At number 3, let's go way outside the prog realm at a band that just should have been the biggest band in the world. And I'm talking about Big Star, formed in 1971 by Alex Chilton and Chris Bell. Alex Chilton, of course, had been a member of the Box Tops. Give me a ticket to an airplane. Dude was like 15 years old when he sang that song, man. That's just ridiculous. They were joined by Jody Stevens and Andy Hummel. And wow, all I can say is Chris Bell and Alex Chilton put together some of the greatest songs of all time. R.I.P. Chris Bell. He's part of the 27 Club too, sadly. Their debut album came out in 1972, #1 record. Oh, so good, just amazing. The following year, Radio City came out. And then in 1978, their third album finally saw the light of day. Third, Sister Lovers. Terrible name, great album. But if you look at the number of bands and artists who cite Big Star as an influence, everybody from REM to The Replacements to Cheap Trick to Guided by Voices to none other than Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley of Kiss calls Big Star some of the best songwriting in the history of mankind, and I can't disagree. They are in the collective consciousness and whatnot, but they're not remembered, and they need to be. They should have been huge. At number 2, let's talk about an Ohio band, shall we? An Ohio band by the name of the Waitresses. Oh, I love the Waitresses, man. Oh, come on, let's go back to the early 80s. And they're kind of like famous now. They've had this really good revival because their Christmas song has been getting played everywhere. Merry Christmas, and I think I'll miss this one this year. But they started out with their first album in 1982. It had a big old hit, I Know What Boys Like. And then they did the theme song to Square Pegs. This band was amazing. They only put out 2 albums and 1 EP. Chris Butler wrote all the songs. Just amazing. Patty Donahue. I love her voice, man. She's amazing. She's so great that Alice Cooper heard this first album, gave her a call and said, "You're going to perform on my new album." So she appears on an Alice Cooper album. The band also, this was not just like some novelty act doing like comic songs, right? The drummer was Billy Ficca from television. Yeah, that Billy. Unbelievable. The bass player was Tracy Wormwolf. She's so good that she went on to become the bass player for the B-52s. And they had a saxophone player who, he was so good, he went on to join the Psychedelic Furs. The Waitresses, I can't say the name. The Waitresses should have been huge, man. And the fact that their Christmas song is getting airplay like crazy every December is just a testimony to how right I am about that. They should have been huge. And at number 1, my number 1, let's see who it is. I'm going with Metal Church at number 1, man, for bands that should have been huge. This band put out their debut album in 1984, right at the height of all that. Metallica was going strong, and you had, Stormtroopers of Death, and you had all this crazy stuff going on, all this thrash stuff, this, blending of punk and metal, and the speed at which it was going. The first Metal Church album is better than anything Metallica ever did. I'm just going to put it out there right now. Kurt Vanderhoof, dude from somewhere up there in Washington State. In 1986, they put out their second album, The Dark. 1989, Blessing in Disguise. Those 3 albums are amazing, but they've got more. My friend Stet Howland is now in the band playing drums. I played with him back in Fort Myers, back in the old days, the Wedge Piece days. So he's a friend. So, I'm a little biased towards Metal Church, and the fact that Kurt started a prog band called Presto Ballet, primarily to pay homage to his love of Yes and Kansas and Genesis, just makes Metal Church even cooler, man. But if ever there was a band that should have been ginormous, you think about like Anthrax and Megadeth and all those bands that blew up at that time period, and little old Metal Church was kind of left by the wayside. Not cool. I'm not happy about it. They should have been huge. And that's it, man. So let me know in the comments, because like I said, I could probably do like 20 of these episodes, man. There are so many bands that should have been huge and just didn't quite make it. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Anyway, if you like this video, please hit that like button. It does help trick the algorithm. It pushes my videos out to, more people if they see that kind of response and engagement. If you really like it, consider becoming a member of the Prog Corner for as little as $1.99 a month. Anyway, boys and girls, I love you guys. You know what time it is. It's time to say the final words. The outro, the famous outro. I've been thinking about getting rid of it, but, every time I try to get back out, I get pulled back in. So here we go, boys and girls. I love you. Peace in the Middle East. Free Tibet. Free the Ukraine. Free your mind. Free beer. And God save the king. Save King Chucky. Save the king. Oh, yeah, that king needs some saving. Oh, yeah, King Chucky. Oh, King Charles III, come to America, and we're going to dance with snakes. Oh, yeah, you like snakes, don't you, Chucky? Oh, but these ones are really dangerous. They're really venomous, and they're really hungry. Anyway, guys, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace, I think.